Hello, everybody. Great to see you again as we take a look back at UFC Vegas 97. We'll also talk a little UFC 306, UFC Noche, Marab Davalishvili taking on Sean O'Malley, and we'll dabble in a little NFL Week 1 discussion. I know a lot of folks who have left mixed martial arts for the day and have spent the entire day on the couch devoted to the gridiron. So I respect the grind. I personally have one fantasy football team that I manage, and I've been a commissioner for many years, though strictly when it comes to making wagers stick to UFC. But I also respect those who have a wide array of strengths. So thank you for tuning in today. I appreciate you. And let's talk UFC Vegas 97, where a few big takeaways. Number one, Gabriel Santos earns his first UFC victory in dramatic fashion, a throttling of a Chinese fighter who came in with a firm belief in themselves and went all 3 rounds. Was a dramatic fight where Gabriel Santos ended up with his hand raised. So props to Gabriel Santos there, earns a hard-fought UFC victory and what came out the other side with a W. Excited about him. And there are a few big takeaways. The other takeaway was that Natalia Silva passes the litmus test that was Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade, a seasoned veteran with knockout power who would not give up on herself. She continued to march forward. I tweeted that we're actively seeing the Matador versus the Bull here. And you had the Bull in Jessica Andrade attempting to charge, attempting to close distance. And she was landing a few strikes here and there, but could not land the seminal blow to take out Natalia Silva. And you saw that Natalia Silva had the footwork, had the striking acumen, was not fearful to engage in the pocket with Jessica Andrade. And she came out the other side victorious. Proud of Natalia Silva, who unfortunately her sister passed away a few months ago, and she dedicated this fight to her. Very, very impressed with her performance, and I'd like to see Natalia Silva make her way towards that 125-pound strap. Then you also had the retirement of Matt Schnell. Matt Schnell, who gives it his all every time he enters the octagon, win or lose. I was at his fight against Su Mudaerji, where he was on the brink of defeat. His legs were collapsing under him, and he turned the tide, but he could not turn the tide against Cody Durden. Cody Durden came in on short notice, entered the octagon with a game plan to stay in Matt Schnell's face, and he got cracked a few times. I must say, Matt Schnell was looking all the part. And what happened? Oh, man. One fell swoop, gets caught in a ninja choke at the beginning of the second round. Oof. What can you say? Props to Cody Durden. I ended up cashing a ticket on Fight Doesn't Go the Distance, as well as a straight money line play on Cody Durden. So proud of Cody to come in and get that W. And I believe he also signed a new 4-fight contract. So way to go, Cody Durden. Way to go. And you saw Matt Schnell leaves his gloves inside of the octagon. I'd like to wish Matt Schnell the best in whatever he chooses to do after this mixed martial arts career as a UFC fighter. I'm sure he has a few other options up his sleeves. He's an intelligent human being. Thank you. everybody for tuning in today. I appreciate you, Jake. 2025 title shot. I could see it happening. I really could. And you also mentioned that Matt Schnell is your favorite fighter for cashing the sub versus Sue Mudaerji. And you also saw the double tap, the double-handed tap. We've seen that before from Matt Schnell against Brandon Royval. And Matt Schnell looked good early in that fight as well. So you had Chris Padilla also landing that thunderous elbow to the dome, to the eyeball of Rongju, and look what happened there. You have a stoppage on a precise elbow to the face. So bit of another reality check for a fighter there. But then you had Chris Padilla, who earns another UFC victory. This kid's rattling them off. And then you have the main event of the evening where we saw Sean Brady 50-45 Gilbert Burns on multiple scorecards. And Gilbert Burns, it seemed like at least the commentary team felt that he was waiting. He was waiting on something, and he would shell up, retreat to the fence. Sean Brady's throwing combinations, then trying to get a body lock and hunt for a takedown. And Gilbert Burns really couldn't get anything off throughout this fight. Seemed like a shell of his former self. I was at Gilbert Burns's fight against Bilal Muhammad, cashed on Bilal Muhammad. I believe that was in Newark. And Bilal Muhammad, champion. Gilbert Burns now 38 years old, tough as nails. I think the writing may be on the wall, at least as far as championship aspirations go. But where does Gilbert Burns go from here? I beg of you, if you wouldn't mind letting me know in the comments section, where do you think Gilbert Burns goes from here? And then you also have Sean Brady, who has been working his way back. He seemed to take the Twitter hate to heart, and that I believe lit a fire under him as he worked on adding a little gas to his gas tank. And you want to talk about gas tanks? The Israeli fighter who ended up beating Trevor Peak Ashmuz. How about that? How about that? You know, with a cardio for days and days and days, he's taken his strength and conditioning so seriously. And Trevor Peak, what he lacks in skill, he makes up for in will. But what's going to happen to Trevor Peak? He's been taking a few L's here and there. Fascinating matchups, and you look up and down this fight card. Steve Garcia landing some hellacious elbows and strikes to Kyle Nelson. Kyle Nelson, you saw the knot on the back of his head, and you wonder, was that a controversial stoppage? It could have been. It could have been. It was poor optics on Nelson's part to turtle up multiple times, but I believe that he was incapacitated, and that was him in survival mode, to be honest. There, we talked about Ashmuz, incredible. How about Bulgarian locking up a submission? I saw a lot of folks on my timeline were banking on Bulgarian winning via TKO, but that was not to be. That was not to be, my brothers. That was not to be. And then you had Andre Lima, who disposed of Felipe Dos Santos. Felipe Dos Santos still lacks a get-up game here. We saw against Altamirano where he was stuck on the ground, lacked the skills, lacked the acumen to get back to his feet. And you heard Dominic Cruz. He also mentioned another fighter, Dylan Butka, who was clinging on for dear life. And Andre Petrosky didn't get the memo. He didn't get the memo that there was an opponent waiting to be decimated, waiting to be finished, but he would not attempt the submission. He was content in, was it 3/4 mount? He was almost there, and he was unable to attempt submission, attempt submissions, and was, it seemed like he wanted to walk out of the octagon with the victory and wasn't pushing the pace. So my heart goes out to anyone who had a fight doesn't go the distance play on that bout or had Petrosky via submission, because that was in play. That was in play, my brothers. So Petrosky, where does he go from here after another win? But he is inching towards territory where he may not be the most appetizing UFC fighter for folks who are looking for blood, who are looking for finishes. And now let's turn the tide here. Let's turn the tide. Let's talk a little football here, a little bit of the gridiron. Let's talk about some week one busts out there. We talk NFL. We're talking about the Cincinnati Bengals losing to the New England Patriots. Who expected that to happen? Who had that on their bingo card today? And you saw Joe Burrow, who has faltered during the initial first few weeks in previous NFL seasons, and it happens again. It happens again, my brothers. You have Jamar Chase, who put his contract dispute to the side for a day while he went out of his way to participate in a game for his teammates, and they ended up taking an L. And you have Joe Mixon. How about Joe Mixon, former Cincinnati Bengal, who, wow, he torched his opponent. I believe the Indianapolis Colts, and he's now with the Houston Texans. And how about also J.K. Dobbins? J.K. Dobbins, who a lot of folks wrote him off from Baltimore. And what are the chances Gus Edwards, Gus the Bus, and J.K. Dobbins end up on the same squad with the Chargers? And J.K. Dobbins looks pretty darn good out there. Looked pretty darn good out there today. And if you're enjoying the Rams-Lions game, it seems like there's some gridlock going on, a 3-3 tie. Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford getting at each other's throats. Once again, we'll see who ends up victorious in that spot. And how about the Tennessee Titans, who ended up giving it away? They put themselves in a good spot with Tony Pollard running like the wind, and their new quarterback ends up throwing an interception with his hands on his head, a rookie mistake, and the Chicago Bears walk away with a victory there at Soldier Field. Very, very impressed. And another situation where you had, this is I didn't have this on my bingo card. Also, Tyreek Hill getting detained prior to the start of today's game in a traffic incident, and he ends up playing and I believe put up over 100 receiving yards and scored a touchdown. So that did not hold him back, and the Jaguars fall short again. Where was Evan Engram? Where was Evan Engram for all of those folks out there who drafted a tight end in the first 7 or so rounds? And you had Isaiah Likely, who is performing admirably after week 1 performance where you had Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce on the field, and who outscores them? I believe also Jake Elliott, the kicker, ended up outscoring Travis Kelce. Who would have thunk it? Who would have thunk it, my brothers? Wow. So enjoying a little action out there with the NFL these days, and props to everybody for having the wherewithal and the tenacity and the will and the cardio to watch so much sports on a daily basis. So cheers to you. And then we also have UFC 306, UFC Noche. that it's on the horizon here. We've got some interesting matchups at the Sphere. I wonder how um, Dana White and crew are going to maximize the use of the technology in the venue, and also have concerns about the camera work, how the audio, how that will impact the fighters who are in the middle of the fight. Um, could that pose a distraction for fighters, knowing what takes place in that environment, how it's not necessarily conducive to a mixed martial arts event, but I'm looking forward to see how the creativity takes place. So a few fighters who I'm looking to target at UFC 306. We had the long awaited fight between Brian Ortega and Diego Lopez. Diego Lopez is becoming a bigger favorite day by day. I see he's at minus 180, minus 190 at some books. And Brian Ortega, the dog here, who you know he will fight hard for your money, even when he rolls an ankle and when he's getting the crap beat out of him on the feet and on the mat by Yair Rodriguez. The man would not quit on himself and came back and broke Yair Rodriguez. And what's going to happen when Diego Lopez gets in the octagon again? I believe Dan Ige stepped in on very short notice, and also Diego Lopez was coming in on somewhat short notice in that bout as well. So neither fighter had a full gas tank, but you saw Diego Lopez run out of gas against Dan Ige. So not a great look for Lopez the way he finished that fight. Another matchup that we have is the trilogy between Alexa Grasso and Valentina Bullet Shevchenko. Really looking forward to that fight. A lot of folks felt like Valentina was shortchanged in the second matchup. The first fight, you saw the spinning kick similar to that of Chris Weidman versus Luke Rockhold. Brought back some nightmare memories for me. I was a big Chris Weidman fan. That was a sad sight to see that night. Chris Weidman hasn't been the same since that Rockhold performance. And another great matchup, Ignacio Bahamondes taking on Manny Torres. Wow, that is going to be an awesome matchup. So we've got a few of those bouts that we just discussed, and then the headliner, Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili. And what's fascinating about that fight is these fighters, their kryptonites is right in front of them. So Dvalishvili, from a striking perspective, especially defensively, he can be obliterated, and he's a sitting duck on the feet, but he will not give up on himself, and his ability to change levels, his tremendous cardio, and the wrestling, rinse and repeat. I wonder how many mat returns we're going to see here. And also, I go back to the Piotr Jan fight. It appears as though Merab or Sean O'Malley was gifted a decision in that matchup. I thought Piotr Jan won that fight. But in this fight, I firmly believe that we'll have a clear winner. Either Sean O'Malley gets off on his strikes and knocks out Merab Dvalishvili, or we have Dvalishvili rinsing, repeating takedowns on Sean O'Malley until O'Malley can no longer continue. But I believe that fight will not hit the scorecards. And I know that there are a few books out there that are hanging out a appetizing number on a play. You also have Yasmin Yurgari taking on Caitlin Souza. That is going to be a great fight. But we've got a lot of fights on the horizon beyond UFC 306. Really looking forward to it. We've got a bunch of people inside of the comment section here. Pepe, welcome aboard. Hope you had a great night last night at UFC Vegas 97. Looking forward to UFC 306. Good to see you. Hey man, this is a cathartic experience. I enjoy interacting with folks on a regular basis, talking fights. I've had this passion for many, many, many decades. Are you going to be in attendance at the Sphere? No, unfortunately, I'll be tending to one of my sons who's recovering from surgery at this moment, and I'm grateful that he's given me the opportunity to come and go live for a few minutes here. So thank you for that. Looking forward to your breakdown of Rodriguez versus Ode Osborne as the flyweight whisperer. I appreciate that. Hey, they make fights for a reason. And one thing I will say, I'd love to see a certain fighter fight to their strengths and not try to reinvent themselves. This is something that um, irks me sometimes, is when you see a fighter who is a striker through and through, and they attempt to reinvent themselves, or you have a wrestler who becomes a striker and but not necessarily regarding the Osborne matchup, but there are many others where that's the case. Remember your roots, remember your strengths, and that goes to in so many facets of life too. Even when it comes to um, making wagers on UFC fights, you have to sift through the data and try to find your roots and your strengths and be honest with yourself. And that's the key here. Authenticity is key. And on that note, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today, and I want to wish you a phenomenal Sunday evening. Hope every ticket on the board cashes for you and your friends. So cheers to you. Thank you for tuning in. Have a phenomenal Sunday and a great rest of the week ahead.